Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome to episode 15, I believe, of the Breaking Point podcast. And what a week we have just had. So many phenomenal matches, but also an incredible week outside of just the matches themselves. Some of the roster changes that we have seen this past week, especially the Dallas one we're going to dive into. Absolutely remarkable scenes, something I did not expect at the start of the season. We're going to get into it in more detail. Of course, some of the reasoning potentially behind this change, which is still very much up in the air, and also the matchups that are coming later this week as well. So thank you guys all for tuning in once again. Before we begin, wanted to give a quick shout out to all the wonderful listeners over on the Spotify. About 200 of you week in, week out. We appreciate every single one of you. Also, we really do appreciate a follow on those other platforms, and a rating as well really helps out the algorithm. You know how much I enjoy helping out the algorithm, certainly. So all that good stuff would be greatly appreciated. Also on the YouTube as well. We keep on tracking over there with the subscriber count. So let's get into this then, lads. Joined once again by Austin, EasyMac, O'Neill, Lionman, of course, joining us once again. Phenomenal news that is indeed, and we're just going to have to dive straight into this because the first games of the week, I mean, the very first matchup we had was Dallas versus Paris. Interesting game, first of all. I mean, Dallas come out with a victory, and then a few hours later, we get the unbelievable news that they decided to bench Huke. And of course, this has been talked about to death already on, everyone's been talking about it this past week, certainly myself included. But I mean, the real shocking thing to me about this, Austin, and of course, there's been some explanations that have gone back and forth. There was Crim talking to Nameless, saying that it was, if you look at the minimap, it'll explain it. There was an article that came out from the Dallas News, I believe it was, yesterday or the day before, as you guys are listening to this, suggesting that it was some sort of comms issue within the team. So very unclear. The real, the incredibly strange thing to me about it is the fact that they dropped Huke literally after they had just won a match. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, especially for a team like Dallas that's just won the World Championship last season. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either when I saw it, because I think it came out at like midnight or really, really late, even for the in NA. So it kind of caught me off guard. I didn't think it was real when it happened. So then when it broke, I was just kind of in shock because I think Huke's a top 5 player in the game. Still don't know what the end goal is. It might be maybe bringing in someone else. Maybe they stick with Fellow, but I was kind of blown away that they would get rid of someone who puts so much pressure on the map and is so skilled with the SMG, especially now that the SMG is the weaker weapon out of in the current meta.
Yeah, so he had a really, really good stage 1. Obviously one of the best players in the game. It's quite obvious that he was going to stay one of the best players in the game, and he has been for the last 4 or 5 years, so it is what it is. But also, wasn't Venom brought in for Temp after a win?
Yeah, did that happen? I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like they won 3-2 against Paris or LAG, and they were unhappy with that result, and so they decided to bring him in.
Yeah, I think
so.
So
that might be right.
Yeah, so making these changes after wins, I understand. They're trying to improve their team, but I just feel it's kind of bad vibes if you win the series. But it is what
it's just so outrageous, man. A Huke of all people to drop, it's just so insane to think that coming into this season, by April, Slash has been benched, Huke's been benched. There's been so many other changes. What is even going on? And okay, so they decided to bench Huke for whatever reason. Still very unclear. I wonder if we'll ever get a proper explanation, because a lot of the other teams sit down, they get the general manager, they get the coach to sit down in front of a camera. And to be fair to teams like the Rocket, Ultra, I think Los Angeles Guerrillas have done it as well. They, even if it's a questionable change, they come to the fans, explain why they've made the change and the reasoning behind it. Dallas don't do any of that. They just release a statement to say Huke, in a remarkable fashion, is just straight up benched, especially given the fact that he's been Hastro's golden child for the last 7 years, or however long it's been. And of course, Crim also, Hastro's wanted on the team for a very long time. So those are kind of the big two, I think, in Hastro's minds. And in the article by the Dallas News, they were saying that Hastro didn't want it to happen, but it was explained to him by the coaching staff, by the players, that was the change they thought Huke was the limiting factor of their roster getting to the next level, which is remarkable to think about, given the talent that he has. And of course, they decided to bring in Fellow, right? So we now have a situation, Austin, where we've got Shotzi and Illy on the SMGs, Fellow's in the flex, Crim's the main AR. To me, I don't see how this team can ever be better than they were before, at least at their peak level. Can I see them winning the World Championship with this team and not with Hukin? Probably not. surely, at least if it were me and you want to try something and you think, okay, maybe Huke's taking the wrong routes, maybe give him a go as the flex player. I mean, I'm sure he could fry with it. Just so many things to say on this change, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the inner workings of the team environment, so we can't really say. Maybe that it was the comms or something like that. It would be kind of wild to me. But I think this team, I think the floor actually gets a little bit better because Fellow's pretty consistent, and I think they'll still be a top 4 team. I just don't think they'll have the crazy, just wow factor moments that Huke brings that helps you beat the top teams. Like when Tyler popped the 3-piece versus Chicago, like that kind of wow moment. That's what Huke kind of brings to the table because he's just so aggressive and so good. But I still think they'll be really, really good. They'll still have a higher floor than most teams. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up against like us, Toronto, Chicago, Minnesota. The top teams.
Yeah, I mean, they may not have that same firepower they had before, but if they have more cohesion because they work as a team and they're trying to get better and they find a way with good chemistry, they could actually be very good. So have to wait and see where they go, to be honest.
The thing to me is like we've got Huke now, one of the most talented players in COD history, one of the best players on the season, certainly chilling on the bench. And he's the type of player that, like, if you look at Slasher, for example, it's not so clear where Slasher goes and what team he improves. Of course, a guy like Slasher, would completely revamp how a lineup is formed. He would be the new leader on the team. A guy like Huke could effectively slot in anywhere and improve a team. But I just don't think that's going to happen because, I mean, we remember in Black Ops 4 when Envy was garbage with Huke on the team, and it was like, all right, Huke wants to go, but we don't want to get rid of him because franchising's around the corner. Let's loan him to Splice for a little bit. He goes there, didn't really do too much, and then comes back to the Dallas Empire and really finally proves, I think, to the fans that Huke actually is, a really top tier player after his Modern Warfare season. Because before that, there was always the question mark of, all right, this guy, people always talk about him so much, but he hasn't actually really won any events. So there was always that kind of lurking over his head. Last season, he really proved it, and now he's in a situation where, like, I mean, I'm sure pretty much every team, like probably 8 teams. I mean, Chicago wouldn't make a change, FaZe would stick, but pretty much every other team, like if Huke was on the free agency market, like they would be making phone calls. But I don't reckon Dallas want to get rid of him. But the problem is, if they don't want to get rid of him, like I don't want to have a world in which we're not watching Huke at the World Championship this year. So it's like either they come to their senses, maybe Dallas will bring him back, or maybe they get better with this team and he's still stuck on the bench, Austin. So I'm kind of mind blown. I don't really know what you think about that. Like, do you reckon we're going to see Huke at champs this year? Because I can't see Dallas letting him go anywhere else, at least for not a pretty penny, right?
Yeah, that's the the rough truth of franchising. That if Dallas does let him go, you're helping a rival, and there's such big money at champs that why would you want to help out a rival unless you're bringing in a lot of cash or a really great player in return. So it's going to be tough to see Huke get off the bench of Dallas unless he gets inserted back into the lineup if they perform really poorly. So that's, to me, it's either you're going to see this like big blockbuster trade somewhere, or you're just going to see either Huke stay on the bench or be brought back into the lineup. It would be really tough for him to find his way onto another team, I would think.
Yeah. What do you guys know his buyout for Splice back in 2019?
Was it like 300K? Or am I tripping?
Something crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something
and
like
it's the same team, so I assume his buyout's pretty similar. But if we're talking about MV 2019, the reason why that team wasn't good was because it was essentially LAG right now, but with Huke. So LAG wouldn't really work.
Yeah, it's what, 8 silly decimate gunless? Huke? Was that a team?
Yeah,
some weird thing like that. Yeah.
But I think Pharaoh was on it for a bit.
Oh no, he wasn't gunless, wasn't he? No, because gunless replaced him.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. And then
My
he went
memory
to
isn't the
Splice,
greatest.
and that Splice team already imploded right before he got there, and then he got to Dallas. So it's like, yeah, I'm surprised that Envy wanted him off the team anyway, just because they love him so much, and he's been there since the start of World War II, pretty much. But
yeah, I think he probably wanted to dip. Oh yeah, Assault was on that team. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, after Huke goes. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. So Huke was on that team with it was even Apathy for a time before he went to EG.
LAG.
Yeah, exactly. You are right about that. That's kind of funny. And then yeah, because it was just World War II EG, right.
Yeah.
And then Pharaoh was there with Huke, and then Huke went to Splice, and Gunless came in. So unbelievable seeds. Not the greatest team, but Huke's obviously proved his worth. Just incredible. I don't know what's going to happen here, because this is the thing. If he doesn't end up playing at Champs this year because he's on the bench, or what happens next year? Like, I'm sure a lot of teams after this season certainly are going to be thinking about roster moves, and Huke's pretty much the top of anyone's mind. If there's anyone top of the most the most talented, the most that people are most eager to pick up, most valuable, let's just say, on the bench, Huke's got to be that guy now. I just can't believe we're 2 months into the season and this is what we're talking about, but it is what it is. Let's talk about their opponent in the first match in the Paris Legion. Actually, I guess before we do that, let's just discuss how they finished their week. We might as well finish off the Dallas chain, because then a few days later they go up against the Toronto Ultra. They get 3-0'd. It wasn't first of all, Toronto, wow, they didn't even lose a map on the weekend. Like, they come in absolutely swinging after their major performance. But against Dallas, first map, Dallas arguably should have won. They went up massive early on. It's checkmate, comebacks are possible, but ice from Toronto to close it out. Game 2 wasn't particularly close. Session Destroy kind of expected me with a new team. And then the control was definitely winnable for Dallas, but Toronto closed out in the end. So, Toronto looking lights out. I'm so impressed with this team right now. Bance is a different breed. He had another 1.4 in their series against Dallas right here, reminiscent of their grand finals run against FaZe. And on the other side, Dallas get 3-0'd for just the second time this season. The first time was to you guys, Austin, I think, in the winners finals of stage 1. The second time is here against Toronto in their very first series with Fellow, which doesn't necessarily spell the greatest thing for this team, Austin.
Yeah, I think they still need time. Obviously, when they made the change, it's tough. So I would say give them a little bit more time in this stage, see how they go. And I know week 1 was kind of tough, so it's going to tell me more of a story of how they bounce back in week 2, because week 2 is going to be a pretty big week for the entire league. I don't know how you feel about that line.
Yeah, I just think about that team. It is crazy that they were really close to winning 2 maps that series against the current champions. Like, they could have won that map 1 very easily, and that was with a new player in their first map. And then map 3, the control, a few kills go the other way, and they win that as well, and they're up 2-1. So it's, it looked a lot worse than it was. And considering the change, I think that they, just give it a bit more time, and they could actually become quite a force. But that really depends on, where Fellow really fits into that squad and, like, chemistry, of course.
That's
Definitely.
the thing with that team, right? Like, they're never going to be bad. They've got Crim, like Illy and Shotzi. It's just an insane core. Plus Huke, obviously, it was insane. And Fellow is a great player. Like, I want to give him his props. And anyone, like, talking trash on Fellow, obviously, he just finds himself in this situation. We would all do exactly the same thing if they decide to make this change. So it's just crazy stuff. So let's wrap that up on Dallas for now. I'm sure there'll be a topic of discussion over the coming weeks, as maybe they get better, maybe they get worse. Who knows? They're certainly under the spotlight. And as you say, Austin, this week is massive. Last week was massive. Every week is massive. The groups are chaos, especially with some of these results we're going to look at. So Paris fall off, or at least they fall off in that series. They played later in the week as well to LAG. So Paris goes 0-2 on the week. The Dallas series is what it is. They were expected to lose that. But with this new team, let's just talk about this Paris LAG match, because Paris, I thought they were favourites. We all had them winning this series in the predictions, I think, for good reason. LAG come out and smoke them. This new lineup with Chino for Vivid, one of the more questionable changes I think I've seen. Not a change I believe is going to be a long-term solution, but in fairness, they actually looked great. Chino had a monster game 2 and game 3, I think, and I think Assault also played great map 1, and Apathy actually had a great map 1 as well. So, credit where it's due there. Do I expect those guys to continue those performances? Not necessarily. And I don't know if you got the opportunity to watch this series line, but at the same time, Paris with Temp on the team, it's like, I thought maybe it would give this team more firepower, but at the end of the day, it actually seems to be pretty much everyone underperforming outside of pretty much Scraps, Austin. So it's a little bit of a strange one, but Scraps seems to be dropping numbers. I think maybe they're trying out some role swaps with him once again, but still, this team in a bit of a strange spot.
Yeah, I definitely thought Temp was going to have a big impact on this team, but I think they're just going through some growing pains right now, because it seemed like Classic was kind of on his own on the SMG at times, and he was kind of getting baited a lot in the front. So that's why I think Classic had a little bit of a stinker this week. But Maddie still looks good. Aqua looked like he had a little bit of a rough week, and I still expect Temp to bounce back. I think he fits. This lineup kind of fits together kind of well if they find the like how they want to play the roles correctly. Because I think they're kind of more of like a methodical team than one of those like cracked out, fast paced. So I give them another week or two, see how they adjust, and then kind of go from there.
That's the thing, like it's tough to decide what to do if you keep getting bodied because I mean basically every series is a must-win series at the moment, and especially this defeat to LAG didn't look good. I mean LAG, in to credit to them, winning this keeps them in 8th of the season standing, so they're actually in place right now to make it to champs, which is I don't necessarily think they're going to be there by the end of the season, but we'll have to see. And yeah, let's just keep touching on LAG real quick, as next week they play 2 games. First of all, they play Ultra, then they play Dallas, so not an easy line, but is there one player you're keeping your eyes on to step up this week for LAG to have good success?
Surprising you mentioned that. Yes, for some reason this year, I don't know why more people aren't mentioning Assault. To me, he's been one of the better players and probably the best player so far this year, other than Vivid on LAG. And so I wanted to keep watching his progress over the year because he's, to me, has actually been like quite a highlight for them and has been, playing really well in the AR role. So
Assault's always solid, man. Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I like City had a great end to stage 2, but people I feel like Assault maybe deserves some more credit.
Yeah, did you see his first bloods for stage 2?
Oh yeah, that was actually insane. 17-1, right?
18-1. Like
that is actually such a nuts stat.
90%.
Yeah, it's a lot because of how well he does on Miami defense and Express defense. That's where like the majority of it comes from. But he was like the leading factor for that. Crazy.
He got first blooded once.
That is an awesome stat line to have. Yeah, like 20 first blood engagements, pretty much losing one of them is that's impressive work. And I don't know, whenever I think Assault, I always think about him with the bar on St. Regis mod back in World War II, just going double positive every single time he played that map. So yeah, still an impressive player. And when these guys are on form, like they really are on form, it's honestly, it's pretty impressive to see. But like this series, they looked super comfortable, but I'm just not sure they can repeat it against tougher competition. Toronto is going to be a massive test for them. But again, LAG always have this thing where any given search and destroy map, they can win against any team in the game, which does make them always a bit scary if they can start to take respawns. But I just can't really see how this Chino change is the long-term solution, but maybe we'll be proven wrong. Let's touch on Toronto because they didn't lose a map. They beat Florida first up. And Florida is kind of interesting because this series also was close, but Toronto just seemed to have some crazy ice right now, Austin, which is, I don't know how to explain it. Honestly, I'm just so impressed and I'm so happy they're playing really well. I hope they can keep it up because it makes the league so entertaining. The fact that, yes, they won the major, I was like, okay, well, let's see how they do in the first week. Maybe they slow down a little bit. They come in here, don't even lose a map. I mean, the win against Florida was impressive, especially given that Florida went on to beat Minnesota just a couple of days later. And then they take down Dallas 3-0. So, I mean, all the pieces of Toronto are just firing on all cylinders. And especially when, like, Cammy turns up as well. That's really what I'm impressed at, because Insight is dropping 10 streaks every control, it seems. And at the major, Cammy didn't even have to do that much, but I think it's underrated, honestly, how much impact he can provide on a map.
Yeah, they kind of fixed what we were talking about in stage 1. If you remember, we were kind of talking about how Cammy was kind of almost too aggressive on the flex, whereas more of like the star flex players like Dashy and Awakening, they would kind of post up a lot more and use those power positions to like their advantage. But they kind of conformed to how they were playing that way, and I think it helped Bance a lot, and that's kind of why we see this big bump in form, because now Cammy's kind of he's doing his role, he's doing his job, and it's kind of, you kind of get underappreciated at times when you're a player like that, but he's doing his job, he's doing his role, which helps the team get better as a whole. So I think this team's this shows that they're keeping up their form, and it's not just a one-hit wonder at a major, and it's awesome to see for them, because they kind of had a lot of doubters going into that stage 2, and now they bounced right back, and they're sticking to their guns, which is nice to see. I don't know if you got to watch too much of them, Lion.
I actually did. They're the one team I'm really keeping up with as well, because they're just really interesting to me. The fact that halfway through stage 2, they just flip a switch and turn into this like top team. And if we look at your stats, Austin, the fact that there's only one negative KD out of 12 different stats. So every player is positive in every mode apart from Kleenex and Control. And he's got a 0.92. And that's just mad. Like all of them are positive. All of them are putting up numbers and doing their role so well. And the fact that they have the ice now to just like close out a series and have the confidence to just like come back in a map because they have all the setups and stuff is just crazy. And so it's really amazing to watch them play. And so Insight as well, just staying just as dominant as he was in stage 2. This team is going to like, if they all keep up this pace, they could again win stage 3. Like they look like that type of team right now.
100%. I mean, they're certainly obviously they're the team to beat, but they're certainly the team to beat in Group A, right? Because with Dallas, bit suspect. They beat them 3-0. Then on the other side, you're looking at the rest of the teams in Group A, and it's a little bit questionable, right? Because let's just touch on Minnesota real quick. They only played one game this week up against Florida, and honestly, this was kind of the big wake show. I mean, it's insane what this guy's capable of, man. Honestly, blows my mind. Minnesota have a series where, I mean, I'm pretty sure Attach and Standy didn't have the greatest series statistically, and it's pretty rare that Standy will have an off series, to be honest. You're expecting it to happen at some point, but he didn't have the greatest series here. And on the other side, you've got Havoc kind of, I guess, kind of chilling, doing his job now, new on this team, and Awakening and Skies turning up massive. And when that does happen, they're just so hard to get past. Neptune had his moments as well. So fair play. I was surprised about this, though, because Minnesota coming in here, I was expecting them to take this series, especially given Florida got 3 just a couple of days ago, Austin. So I don't know. Is the league just incredibly competitive at this point? Clearly it is. But yeah, I mean, Awakening, man, what a guy.
I just think that midfield is like really stacked. I think you're seeing a lot more of like the competitions between, like Florida in like LAT. You're seeing a lot of those more like battles that are really, really close. I think Florida is like one of those underdog teams that, they're just struggling to patch together practice with the actual matches, because there's a lot of factors that go into that. Like your comms definitely change from practice to play to the matches. So they just have to find the right way to do that, and they'll be a lot better. I know they've talked about that a lot, which is part of the reason they brought back Colt Havoc into the lineup. I think the talent they have is just too good for the results they're having. I think, Skies has been a consistent top AR in the league. I think Awakening is a top 5 player in the league. Even when his KD was low, because I know a lot of people were pointing at that, he was still putting up crazy damage numbers on the map. And he's just one of those flex players that are like, he's a star. And once they start putting it together around him and Skies, they'll be, one of those teams to look out for. I think they'll be one of those like gatekeepers from like the top, like 5 to the rest of the midfield. So we'll have to see how they go the rest of the week.
Yeah, I think, what maps were they playing against Minnesota, Florida? Do you know?
Good question.
Well, the reason I mention that is because it seems to be in the league right now that when teams just don't get their vetoes right, they get completely smoked. And it's like the team that gets the vetoes are going to win. Like if you look at another team like London, whenever or most of the time when they get a checkmate control, they just blow the other team out of the water, and then they'll come onto a raid control or I don't even know, another map, and then just get completely smoked. Sorry, my brain is dead, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I mean, they got, for hard points, they had Raid and Garrison, which they won both of them. For the S&D, they played Moscow and won, and they played Raid Control, and they lost that. But I will say, we've played against them a lot in practice. Raid Control is Awakening's playground. That guy is a beast. I don't understand how good he is on that map. He dropped 31 on that. Priesta. It was basically the Priesta versus Awakening show.
Oh, wow, yeah, it was.
Yeah. Those two were
Priest was a
going at
monster.
it.
Credit where it's due there.
So happy he's doing well again.
Yeah, dominated the search as well, despite losing. Dropped 14 for the L. That's tough.
I definitely agree with you though, Lion. Like the vetoes play a large factor in these teams, like whether they do good or bad. Because, like when you get into like more of like the 5th, 6th, 7th placing in the standings, like your map pool isn't as deep as the rest of the teams, which is part of the reason why you're down there. So. And I think Florida's really, really good on Garrison. They've been comfortable on that map all season long. And seeing them improve so much on Raid, which was actually Minnesota's, I would say they're probably their best map going into this. It's interesting that kind of Minnesota struggled on the 2 hard points as much as they did. I'll just say that, I guess.
Yeah. But they did seem to be early on in the year like a very heavy S&D control team, and their hard points seem to be the weakest mode. And so the fact that that's crept back in is a little bit worrying. But because we thought that change with Standy kind of fixed their slaying issue. But it seems like the start already, he's just, not quite on the same role he was in stage 2 Standy so far. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, they do have a warm-up match in Paris Legion next week to try and get back to 1-1. And then from there, they play Ultra. And then obviously the group gets a bit tougher with them still yet to face the Dallas Empire. Another team that's been in a tough spot, certainly the Seattle Surge. They come in here after a much improved stage 2. We talked a lot about this team and a very exciting team to watch because stage 1, garbage. Fustini was in a tough spot with his internet. Then he fixes that, looks way better. Gunners is looking great. Octane performing as expected. Stage 2, they look really promising, but don't quite have the result they wanted at the major. Then they come in here to stage 3. And this first matchup against LA Thieves, I think, really did set the tone. Because if they'd have won this, everyone would have been like, all right, Seattle, they're here to play. They're not messing around. They're only, the second team after Toronto to actually beat this new LA Thieves lineup. Doesn't happen, though. They go up 2-0, then they get reverse swept. That is a dagger. It happened. They got reverse swept as well by Minnesota, right, at the major or whatever it was. Oh, no, it wasn't the major, but it was like almost to qualify for it or whatever. Well, they could have made winners bracket, and it all fell apart. Another breakdown. And then they go on a couple of days later to lose again to OpTic. And obviously you feel a bit bad. They keep playing OpTic, and OpTic match up so well against Seattle, it seems. But look, at the end of the day, they're one of only 3 teams, at least as a recording, that have not made a change so far this season. OpTic haven't made a change, FaZe haven't made a change, Surge haven't made a change. Surge sit right now at joint 10th in the league with Paris at 50 points only. That's not going to cut it to make it into the World Championship. So you've got to think, all things considered, we've seen many more surprising changes than if Loony was to step out of this team. I think Loony's a great player. I think he's really talented. I'll let you go in a second line. I think he's a really smart player, but I'm just not convinced that this team is going to be the same team come stage 4.
Yeah, I just wanted to drop a nuke. Imagine Loony for Huke.
Oh, can you imagine?
I feel like I don't want to bag on Loony, but he's not playing that good. Like, we always talk about Loony as like being the smart player on this team, and that's why he doesn't need to drop the numbers that he does. But Huke, I would say, is nearly as smart. Maybe not quite the same IQ, but possibly. And he drops numbers, And like, I feel like that's the issue right now, is that they don't have 2 SMG players that can drop those numbers. If they put Huke in there for Loony, it's probably impossible. But if they did, that team would probably become like a top 4 squad because the other players are playing so well. Who knows?
Hypothetically, that would be awesome.
Moving on, because I kind of just derailed us, but yeah.
No, that's a good shout. I mean, what do you think, Austin? Like, it just seems to me that if there's any change you've got to make, it's got to be Loony. And the concern is to me that, like, the reason why Loony was on this team, not just the reason, but one of the reasons, was because he can actually keep gunless in a team without the chemistry exploding. And he has good chemistry with Octane as well. So it's like, if you get rid of Loony, does the team just collapse all of a sudden, even though maybe they put up better numbers for a while? I don't know. They're kind of in a tough spot.
No, I think they would be good with Preston and Pierce, Gunless and Preston. Wow, I can't speak. Prestini and Gunless calling. As of right now, they are the 2 like vocal ones on the team, I believe. So they're really vocal. So I have a feeling they'll be able to carry that. There's I don't want to rag on Dan because obviously that a lot of people do that already and just say horrible things, but obviously he's not performing up to the level that he expects or the team expects. And unfortunately, right now there's a lot of talent on the bench. When you think of Vivid, you think of Huke, you think of guys still in the elite circuit. A lot of people say like John or Jared. There's just so much SMG talent out there that when you're not performing on the level that you need to, and even on his own team, Gunless has been phenomenal with the 3rd SMG. So he's in a really tough spot where it's like you don't have that many lives left, and obviously they didn't perform well week 1. So it's like if week 2 doesn't go well, when does this team call for a switch? Because even if they do bring in someone else, even like the guy like Rex on UT crew, you bring in someone else, you get that little honeymoon phase going into the major, and you need points so desperately. It just might be the time to make that call. Make the switch.
Especially because Octane talks so much about the honeymoon period, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a thing.
I was just going to mention Yeah, it is for sure. And we saw that last week with LAG for sure. I was going to mention one more thing with Seattle. I think that you mentioned Vivid. Vivid for Loony as well would be a great change because Pristini could return to being his like aggro self, and you would have another SMG there to like back him up. But yeah, I don't want to rag on Loony. Looney's he's done so much in his career, and he deserves more respect. So
That'd be a nice duo, I think. Though, like Vivid and Pristini, I think that could work
Yeah.
great. Both players that like we don't necessarily talk about the slaying they put up necessarily, but Pristini's been able to do so, and Vivid puts an awful lot of pressure on the map. And Octane and Gunless are not like slow players by any means, so that could be really interesting. But anyway, we'll have to see what happens on that front. But Seattle in a bit of a tough spot. Another team in a tough spot is the Ravens. I mean, they make this change. They bring in Zaptius to the team, and Dylan drops out. They play two not so easy matchups against Chicago and LA Thieves. I mean, like at the end of the day, this group is so tough. It's so tough to win games. London are bottom of the league. They're 30 points or something. Their season has been an absolute shambles because they couldn't get the players they wanted. They've not officially, but Zero's been released to our understanding as of today, which is also crazy, right? Like, I think he could have made so much of a big difference to this team if he'd have been able to get out there, but they've just decided, well, it's no point us paying you for the rest of the season, and maybe if we want to get you back next season, we can, and I guess they'll try and re-sign him, but it's not ideal. And now they sit here with Zaptius and Zaptius and Zed as kind of the SMG duo, Paul X on the flex, Shawnee as the main AR. Just a weird mix of players. I'm not sure. Like, it's not like these players aren't pro league caliber, but it just seems that if you line up all the teams next to each other and you had to pick the one which is like, you know, are these players really going to win series on a regular basis? You're looking at London thinking, not necessarily. Strange change to me. Dylan wasn't necessarily performing great. Not sure Zaptius is really the solution, even though he does have chemistry with Paul X. So it is what it is. I mean, they're just in an absolutely disastrous spot, I think. Also, like, what do you even do? You can't get Zero out there. You can't get Afro out there. All the old talent that you wanted is stuck on the bench. You've already made so many changes, and your team just seems to be getting worse and falling behind the pack. It's like, it's just, catalogue of errors, really.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is like the team's obviously still making moves to try to make the team better. So, like, you can't really fault the team for not trying. Every time I say they're not going to make another change, they end up making a change. So I don't want to say they won't, but the team obviously, it's no fault to their own. They have struggles with visas. I mean, obviously, maybe I'll have you touch on that, but I believe like it's a combination of Brexit and the pandemic that's just combining to like not be great to have an Englishman trying to get a visa right now. So that's why, like, you know, Trey was probably their best player in my opinion in the preseason when he was playing from England, which is crazy to say by itself, but he was shredding. You know, he's a great player in this game. Afro, great SNG at the beginning of the year. I haven't been able to see a lot of him because he hasn't made it to Elite in a little bit, but like shredding at the beginning of the year. So, you know, if you have the lineup, if you could snap your fingers and have whatever lineup you could have, I bet you they'd be in a much better spot. Obviously, they're just trying to deal with it and chug along and just make the best out of a bad situation. So it's tough. It's really tough. I don't know where they kind of go from here, honestly.
I mean, in my opinion, the only real hope to have like a good stage was to be good in SND. And they literally, 3 of the players on their team have a 0.4 or less. What is that, bro? Like,
That was brutal, actually, the Miami they played.
bro. But yeah, their control, they seem to be all right. And especially on Checkmate, they win those maps. But everything else seems to just be rough for them at the moment. And it doesn't really look like there's... I know this is harsh, but it doesn't really look like there's much hope of it becoming a good roster, you know, right now, as it stands.
I have no hope.
Controversial take. I'm probably going to get Twitter clipped, but, you know, it's just at the moment looking pretty rough. And so if there was going to be a change, which player would you take out?
Man, like, I don't even... That's the problem, right? They've tried everything. But it just doesn't work. I mean, I like Shawnee. I think he's a good piece. I think Shawnee's... I see what you mean. Yeah, just go full Wester. Get Venom off Thieves somehow. Try and get I don't know. It is what it is. I can't see what to do. I mean, you talked, Austin, about the visa situation. I believe, I mean, Zero's talked about it a couple of times, but to my understanding, like Hydra's visa was already in progress, so he was able to get through. But the problem with Zero was that it ran out at kind of the wrong time, and getting an interview for a visa is just like impossible. I think he said that the earliest one he can get is in September or something, because there's issues with the only visas they're taking like emergency ones because it's tough to get out there, and there's Scraps made it because he had one, and then he had to go through like the quarantine stuff where you go to Mexico first and do that type of stuff. So it's all a little bit strange. It's super unfortunate. I just think if I'm the management of London, I don't even know what I'd do anymore, and I'm really just waiting for next year to try and get Afro and Zero on a team and completely rebuild this roster, and hopefully with some more UK talent, because I don't think Paul and Zap are good players, but I don't I kind of hope that our team goes back to a UK team in time. But in fairness, Toronto are kind of doing a stand-up job for the European guys as well. So I can't really be too bad as a European Call of Duty fan right now. So yeah, London just in a tough spot. We can talk OpTic as well, given we didn't touch on them as yet. They 3-1 London, they 3-0 Seattle. We talked last time, Austin, the fact that this was the ideal start for them to the stage. They looked pretty damn good. I mean, against London, they only lose that checkmate control, I believe. And all the other maps they win in the series, in both of the series that they played, wasn't incredibly comfortable at times. They certainly was competitive, but looking a lot better. I think they haven't been streaming scrims as of late, I believe, Austin, and they've been playing a lot of best of 11s off stream, and I think they believe that's helped their play. This was the ideal 2-0 week that they needed before they get into a tough time this week. They are going to play up against the Thieves on the Sunday, and then they play their 2 matches in the final week up against New York, and then you guys again. So kind of builds up from there, Austin.
Yeah, I mean they haven't been streaming scrims, I believe, because with the the matches Thursday through Sunday, and best of 11 practice usually on the Tuesday, Wednesday. So you really don't have any time to stream them, which I think has actually done them a lot of good because they can like buckle down and focus, and they don't have people like me seeing everything. So I think they've done a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's showing. I said they had to come in and do what they had to do, and beat these teams in week 1, and they did just that. So step 1 done. Now you're on step 2. Continue that week 2. Keep expanding your map pool, because I think that was a big limiting factor to their stage 2, and keep showing that you can be really versatile on a lot of different maps. And I think they'll keep going pretty strong going into week 2 here.
Yeah, and if we look at the past with OpTic, whenever they don't stream scrims, they always do come back just a little bit better. Like in small areas, they focus a lot more on just the actual comms during scrims, I assume. Because when they're streaming, they're just trying to be entertainers, and it's just a little bit pointless. But if we look at the stats, like the fact that they won their 2 series and Dashy isn't even playing it as like the highest level, like not even Scump as well. It's just Envoy and Formal who are slaying and like staying positive in each game mode, and so that's a good sign for OpTic. The fact that they have that room for improvement as well, but they're still winning series.
Yeah, Envoy especially. I mean, Envoy and Formal both, really. I think that Formal hasn't, Envoy, people always talk about him a lot, but I don't think Formal necessarily got as much credit as he deserved necessarily for some of the performances he's been putting up as of late, because it's not so easy to do always with the AR. Like, we haven't seen too many ARs being incredibly pop-off so far this season, so seeing Formal do well is impressive for them.
I just wanted to mention, I feel like this year we kind of overlook ARs because of how dominant they were last year in MW. And so we will look at an AR with like a 1.1 or a 1.2, and we won't really give it the credit that it deserves of previous years. And Modern Warfare, because every AR had a 1.1 or a 1.2, it just kind of, made it look more like SMGs with high KDs were the ones carrying. But this year it's different. So, and he's playing well. Like, he's very consistent this year, very, very consistent.
Yeah, this year it's definitely a lot easier.
Go on.
This year is a lot easier to get a 1, but it's way harder to get like a 1.2 consistently. So yeah.
I'll see you just sit at the back and drop a 1.4 standard. The worst get an Octane strategy.
Just didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk Los Angeles Thieves before we get into what I thought was the most interesting series of the week, probably the best series of the week, FaZe versus New York. But let's touch on LA Thieves, because they obviously reverse sweep Seattle. They then play London, so they have the same bracket run actually that OpTic did. And okay, they also win both series. They sit at 2-0, and as I mentioned earlier, they're still the only team to beat them so far is Toronto, this new lineup. I gotta say it's impressive. I mean, they seem to have the composure. They do the game one against London. They kind of got smoked on raid, but they still make it back. I mean, pretty comfortable in the search, actually very comfortable in the search. And then they close out the final two maps as well. So I've been really impressed by what I've seen from Thieves, and I think especially from, I mean, Kenny. First of all, it's just unbelievable. Like this guy when he went plus 38, or like dropped a 1.7, I think, in their series against London or something, kind of outrageous like that. But then also you've got Venom, and I think Venom deserves a mention here because despite Draza having a monster first series he was in and TJ looking good, Venom's been the guy that's really improved an awful lot since he was first brought into this lineup, and that is like a massive thing for them. And with those guys performing, this team I think is very scary. They play very loose as a squad. They don't seem to be too restricted or anything. They just kind of move around the map and just leverage the gun skill, and it's working so far. Will it work against the real best of the best? I don't know, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on Austin because they've started out good.
Yeah, I mean they're very well coached. Obviously our friend Brandon is their analyst. JCap's the coach. They're really well managed. My dog's there for their GM. So like they're always will have like a good comms and fundamentals kind of down. They definitely play loose, which is unpredictable, which kind of helps you out when you face off against more of like the mid-tier teams. So that's on your side, but they'll always have like the questions of how do their SMG duo stack up against other like the top teams? How does Kenny and Draza work as the AR duo against top teams? But they've been shutting everyone up, playing very well. So I think they'll just continue to be one of those top of the midfield teams that can upset teams and make a deep run potentially in a bracket if it just falls their way.
Yeah. The thing about this team, like, when I noticed that during the major, Draza was playing pretty good. Venom finally like found his own. I feel like it took him a few series to really become the player that he is now. But if Kenny keeps dominating with the AR, like playing at this level, then this team has got like endless limits. Like they can merge around Kenny as well because he's such a good player at the moment. A 1.96 in control, like that's like top AR stats right there, and he's only had it for what? How long? 2 weeks.
Pretty much.
Like, yeah, and so that's just crazy. So if he can get even better as well. Like he's only just picked up the AR, so we'll just see where that goes. Because this man, when he's at his top form, is probably a top 3 player in the game. If we look at World War II, if we look at him at his peak in BO4 as well, so he's got so much potential.
A fun player, dude.
Yeah, playing crazy with the AR.
What helped him is he's pretty much just continue playing what he was doing before because he was the second Krieg to begin with a flex. And he kind of just didn't slow down. He just keeps playing aggressive. Yeah. So it's helped him out a lot that way. So he's definitely one of the top players right now at his position.
Yep.
You got to think as well that like coming into this stage, we're also having a situation where they're playing on the new patch, or coming into this this week, right? And the SMGs are worse, a little bit more stuck in the mud, a little bit slower. So in theory, that helps the Krigs even more. So we could be seeing some crazy numbers. But let's talk on the last series, not actually quite the last series of the week. That was Toronto versus Dallas. But the final series we wanted to touch on here of the week was FaZe versus New York. Absolute banger series. I mean, game one was crazy on the Garrison Hardpoint or whatever. And then game two, you guys bounce back in the search. I mean, of course, we've got the new New York with Hydra. Very exciting to see what these guys are going to be capable of. Hydra against the best team in the game, or at least in terms of power rankings, probably FaZe still sit at number one at least after the major. I mean, wow, he comes in as a great map one. You guys bounce back in the search, and then, I mean, game 3 was really close as well. He closes out on the Garrison control. Then game 4 was Apocalypse, really went down to the wire. And the thing that surprised me, I mean, I'll obviously throw it to you, Austin, to discuss exactly how you guys went wrong in this series, because it's certainly a surprise that a brand new team will beat a team like FaZe for only your 3rd loss of the entire season. But really, it was the hardpoints to me, the fact that you guys were 12-2 in hardpoint in stage 2, and to kick off stage 3, go 0-2, which, of course, not what you're expecting. Sometimes it happens, right? You get better at one game mode, work on your search, and then another game mode falls off. But obviously, hardpoint and search are the 2 most important modes. So, yeah, really interesting series, a crazy one from a spectator point. But yeah, I mean, fair play, New York.
Yeah, they definitely played pretty well. I think we kind of shot ourselves in the foot. It just sucks losing and knowing like you kind of beat yourself. Definitely in the respawns, we're playing differently than how we normally do. and we had like some communication like blunders that just compound the problems, and it just ends up as something we have to learn from and get better from quickly, because obviously like even with our slumps, it still sucks, and we got to learn from every single little mistake and continue to get better for the end goal. So New York played well. They capitalized on the mistakes we made, definitely in the hard points. There's definitely some moments that like I don't want to capitalize on, but there was definitely like a couple moments where we made a mistake, they took advantage of it, and those are things that we cannot let happen again down the line.
Yeah, I wasn't that surprised by Hydra. I feel like he played pretty much at the level we've been seeing him all year at challenges. He's proven that he is a really good player in that level, and so when he came up, having a 1.09 is pretty much what I expected. And it's nice to see Clay also having a new rookie and like dominating on the same level as him. Like their stats are almost like the same. Like Clayster had a 1.3 in hardpoint. Not Mac. Hydra had a 1.26. They both went neg in the SND, and then they both had like a 1 in control. And so they're just mirroring each other. And it's like very typical Clay, He loves his rookies. When he has a rookie, he goes off. He won 2 world championships with rookies the last 2 years. So who knows? It might be a storyline as we go forward.
I'm telling you, dude, like Clay, obviously if they lose this series, this would be a discussion, but the whole greatest of all times rankings to me is actually really interesting in terms of where Clayster fits in, because okay, you've obviously got your Crim, your Scump, your Karma, like Formal. Those are the big names, probably top 4 with Clay. But yeah, actually, yeah, legit the OpTic Dynasty. That's kind of funny, but it's basically the OpTic Dynasty plus Clay, the top 5 players of all time. But it's like, where does Clay actually fit? Is he just 5th, or is he above Formal, or does he jump Karma? I'll let you touch this line. Sorry. Go.
I think Formal and Clay are very similar, because I think that. So I'd probably put them 4th equal, because Clay has more achievements, but I think Formal's slightly, if we look back through the past few years, a little bit more talented. In AW, that's questionable. In BO, I guess Modern Warfare, it's also questionable. But those like middle years, Formal was just a slightly more talented player. But I think, because Clay has got those 3 world championships, you kind of have to put him on an even playing field as Formal. So 4th.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, it's tough because like Formal was better for more games than Clay was. Like Formal was better individually than Clayster at a few games, like more games than Clay was better than him. And Clay obviously had that drought of not winning for like 1,500 days, or 1,300, whatever it was, which is going to hurt him.
1,400.
1,400 days. I got it wrong both times, but yeah, there it is. And then of course the last couple of seasons, like just in terms of the caliber of player, like even though, okay, you look at the accomplishments, you look at the pure talent compared to the rest of the top 5, and maybe he drops down, but just the fact that he wins the world championship, gets dropped effectively, or the team breaks up, wins the world championship again, gets dropped, and now here he is with a brand new team on the verge of being 29, bringing up new rookies, still winning maps and series, and putting up incredible numbers against the best team in the game. I mean, it's just remarkable. Just wanted to give Clay his moment, because he certainly deserves it. And especially given he was talking a little bit ago about how he was like, do I want to step away for a while? It's just great to see someone that's been around this long still dominating the scene as he does. And very impressive player. Love him or loathe him. I always think he's entertaining one to keep your eyes on Austin, certainly.
Yeah, I think Clay's been performing really, really well this season. One of the top ARs in the league. So it would be a real shame to see him step away. I'm glad he isn't, and he's still on top of his game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One final thing I wanted to touch on this series was just that we saw quite a lot last season, Austin, that you guys would, especially the latter half of last season, you'd make it to a game 5, it'd go the distance, and then you still find a way to get over the line, right? There was that period where it was sort of super back and forth, like you'd go game 5 basically every team, but always ice up in the game 5. And here, like, it was just kind of surprising to me that wasn't the case, especially given New York, you guys were up 3-0, then you're up 5-3. It felt like certainly should close this out on the raid, search and destroy. And it's like, it didn't happen. Which was surprising, because maybe the whole idea of RCTs coming into this team was that you guys in the pressure, the ice moments would have more clutch factor, I guess, to get over the line that maybe you didn't have last season. So it's just kind of interesting. At the end of the day, it's a league game. I'm sure you guys will bounce back next week, but certainly something that I'm keeping my eyes on next time you go to a Game 5 round 11.
Yeah, I mean, even if we won that, it was still like a loss, just because we should never lose any too hard points to anybody. But I'm kind of happy we kind of lost that, because it's still like a like not a wake up call, but it's still like stuff we can learn from. You got to learn from your losses, obviously, and losing that, it's gonna burn the fire greater for the rest of the stage. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to get better for champs, which is kind of like what we were preaching. It's just like you got to take this, learn from it. There's clear areas where you can take from that New York match, learn from it, keep getting better. So each loss I think it's good to mold the team for the end of the year, especially in a league match. At the end of the day, doesn't mean too much. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to take it how it is. Just take it, learn from it, watch it back. Take that, learn it. Set goals for practice and continue getting better.
100%. All right, let's move on for the matches briefly. We will get into the matchups for next week, or at least some of the big ones we'll touch on. Wanted to touch on a couple of things first. First of all, being this new meta, not really sure if there's actually going to be a new meta. It's a new patch at the very least. So the SMGs are somewhat worse. They're a bit slower, a bit more sluggish. I think the pros have been talking about it today. Maybe that's the video I'll end up making for tomorrow. But the FFAR has also been a question, because I saw Envoy, or it wasn't Envoy, but I think it was Dashy or Scump or whatever, was saying on the OpTic podcast last week the fact that Envoy had been trying out the Milano on Raid. Kind of interesting, kind of similar to what he was doing with the Uzi last season, when that kind of became a thing for a little bit. And then we've also got Dashy trying out the FFAR, and I don't really know if that much has changed with it, but I think that people have started to use it again just because there was some slight tweaks, like some slight buffs to the FFAR. And there was a clip that came out of Dashy talking about how he kind of likes it, he's been with people with it, and saying, okay, maybe it'll be meta, maybe I'll give it a go. My doubt is that, let's say Dashy starts pulling it out in scrims. I don't know if he has been, but if he is, then I can certainly see a world in which he's just really good with the FFAR because he loves it, and then all the other teams are like, yeah, let's just GA this as soon as we can. So I'm not sure we're actually going to see it, but it would be kind of nice, I think, in theory, especially given the SMGs may be somewhat worse. You could have a world, Austin, where you've got maybe on a raid or something, you've got a 74U and Milano, and then an FFAR and a Krig. I don't know, as your 4 players on the team. I kind of doubt that's going to happen. Once again, wishful thinking from me. But can you see a world in which we have a meta which isn't just 74Us and Krigs?
Honestly, I don't think so. Milano was more of a flash in the pan. Everyone thought it was going to be good. Doesn't end up like it. It still doesn't compete against the 74U. The FFAR, honestly, the statistics around it are amazing. If it was buffed, if the recoil was buffed even a little bit, it would be the best gun in the game by far. Which is kind of scary to think about, but it's like still the recoil on the medium range to long range fights are just a little bit too much. Krieg still outduels it a lot, because if you just miss one bullet in one of those fights, you lose. So the Krieg still outclasses it, especially with the headshot multiplier back. The Krieg pretty much outclasses everything now. 74U will still be like the go-to SMG. I just think you're going to see a lot more three Krieg metas on some of the bigger maps, which is something to look out for. Obviously, today is the first day all the teams are practicing, so we'll see. It will definitely develop as the weeks go by. I don't think we'll see the true meta this week. I think you'll see it more towards the major 3.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on the meta. I just would like to see the FFAR in, because it just reminds me somewhat of the Bow 27. Just I love that iron sight and the way it shoots, and the recoil is pretty vertical as well. So I don't know, it just reminds me of that gun, and I would actually love to see it. But you mentioned that point about GAs. If a gun does come in and a player starts dominating, it is more than likely that the rest of the league don't want to adjust to it and will just get rid of it. So
yeah, it seems been quite a while since we've had a GA discussion. It feels like it might be on the horizon once again. Who really knows? We'll have to see. I mean, it's interesting with OpTic not streaming scrims. You don't get to see quite as much insight behind the scenes as maybe you typically would. So to finish off, let's talk about some of the big matchups that are coming up this week, because there are some massive ones. There's obviously so many implications. These groups are kind of crazy right now. I'll actually get up the group standings here in just a second so we can run through what they look like for each of the particular groups, because it's honestly chaos, especially with you guys losing, right? Because you now have a situation where, let's have a look, here we go, stage 3 groups. We've got FaZe actually sitting at 0-1, which I didn't expect, but let's go Group A first of all before we talk through some of the key matchups. Group A is Toronto at 2-0, then we've got Gorillas 1-0, Dallas at 1-1, Mutineers at 1-1, Rocker at 0-1, and Paris at 0-2. So Toronto pretty much destined for winners, you'd think. Paris destined for losers. The rest of it, who really knows? Then on the other side, you've got Seattle at 0-2, London at 0-2. Both of those are probably going to end up in the losers bracket. Then we've got Chicago 2-0, Thieves 2-0, Subliners 1-0, and FaZe, of course, 0-1. So, okay, Ravens and Surge, they probably will find their way into losers, but we've got to find 3 out of Chicago, Thieves, Subliners, and FaZe that make winners, which, well, it's very interesting, especially given the fact that FaZe are 0-1. Now, would I be surprised if you guys turn it around and end up 4-1 at the end of the stage? Not necessarily, but it's not also going to be so easy to do so. So, with that in mind, I don't know if you guys have got the schedule for this week, the Paris home series, whatever they call it, up on the screen. We can at least point out some very interesting matchups to me. I think the first one that we can touch on the Thursday is FaZe versus Thieves, because I'm expecting FaZe to come out and win this. As I've said, though, the only team that's beaten Thieves so far is Toronto Ultra, and if we get a great performance from Kenny and from Venom, it's not out of the realms of possibility that Thieves managed to find a way to win this as well. So, obviously a must-win series for you guys, Austin, and, well, you know, we'll have to see how you guys do. It's only a couple of days away.
Yeah, we pretty much have to win out because if you guys remember, I think Minnesota went 3-2 twice and was still in losers. So obviously losing to New York wasn't ideal because we know Chicago is always going to be at the top. LAT is going to be really good, and I forget who is the other team.
New York's up there, right?
New York's up there. LAT, Chicago. Yeah, I'm missing one team though. I don't know who I'm missing.
I mean, the Surge and Ravens.
Surge. Yeah, I'm still worried about everyone. So we definitely have to go perfect 4-0, and even then, I think we're still battling for the 2 seed unless New York loses twice. It's definitely going to be really, really hard. Long road ahead, but I mean, I think that LAT matchup Thursday. What do we play second? That's got to be clean. That's got to be like cutthroat. So I'm hoping we go out and really shine. Other than that, I think, yeah, you can go line.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like that is probably the most key series of the week because it will probably make or break the difference when you guys being like top seed or like 3rd or 4th. And so coming out with the fire in that series as well and like keeping the momentum going into, because you play, Thursday and Saturday. Yeah. On this like screen, it looks like it's back to back, but so if you win that series, I feel like that completely makes it like you guys all good because it'll bring back the fire and you guys will be back. So yeah,
especially playing London after that, like you'll find yourself in a good spot.
Yeah, one big series and you'll have the momentum. So I think that's the one.
Absolutely, I mean, London's really good at hard point, which obviously we just lost twice. So it's even that kind of like.
That would be the
yeah.
You better not lose that series.
Yeah, I don't like to toot up my own team as much like on here, so I just like to look at it kind of like unbiased. So like London still, even though they weren't good week 1, I mean every team in this league's scary. So that like every matchup scares me. So I get nervous for them all, both of them.
Yeah, I feel you don't want to do what OpTic do and like do their podcast where they call everyone C2 or whatever.
We're F tier. Everyone else is A tier.
Exactly. The formal strap from the second episode they did. Yeah. 200 IQ for you, Austin. I respect it. I'll point out one match before I'll throw it open for you guys to comment on which ones you think are interesting. Of course, OpTic versus Thieves, I mean, we can discuss, but one I'm actually really interested in is Empire versus Gorillas, because that's on the Saturday, and I don't really know what to expect, right? This is where Empire have to come out and beat this team effectively. Like, if you lose to LAG, like, you're going to get clowned big time on the timeline, I can tell you that for free already. And at the same time, LNG actually looks really good week 1, so I don't really know what's going on here. If Chino keeps playing well, I mean, Apathy, of course, is obviously a big name player. So that's certainly one I'm keeping my eyes on because there's a lot of potential storylines in there, really either way it goes. If Dallas win, it's expected, but it's not out of the realms of possibility that they struggle a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I think LAG is a tough matchup for them. I still think Dallas is going to win, but definitely not one you want to lose because that that just puts all the pressure on you. It'd be ridiculous. So, other than that, I think the Toronto and Minnesota matchup's pretty big. I think that's kind of like another prove it match for both of them. So there's a lot of looks like every day has a good matchup. So it'll be an awesome week to watch.
Yeah, it's going to also be a really tough week for Gorillas because they come out against Toronto first up on Friday, which is going to be a really tough series for them. And then they go up against Empire, which if they lose that series before against Toronto, is probably not going to go well either. So I don't know what to expect with them. They look so good against Paris, but Paris look really average. And so we don't actually know their true potential yet. And this week is going to be their proving week. So if they win both series, if they beat Ultra, dude, and they get the 1 seed with
Number
Ching,
1 seed, baby. LHG to the top.
that'd be something. That'd be
something.
And then
Be absurd.
Another series that I'm obviously looking forward to is OpTic versus LA, because Thieves versus OpTic is always a great series, regardless of who's on the rosters. It's just like E Classico, but even bigger because of the nade shot rivalry.
They played twice, right, so far this season. Well, maybe only once, because they played at the Kickoff Classic, of course. OpTic 3-0'd them. And then they played at the Stage 1 Major, I think. And OpTic beat them 3-1.
I believe so.
I don't think they've played since then. So, and of course, they've got a totally different lineup now. And this was a matchup we were hoping to see, right, at the Stage 2 Major, when if OpTic had beaten Rocket in that crazy series and Thieves had beaten Ultra, then we would have had OpTic versus Thieves in the losers semis or whatever. They'd have both made it to the Sunday. That didn't happen, so we get to see it here, which is great. I mean, this is one of the best rivalries, I think, in COD. It's tough because it's not even like, in theory, there's not even that much of a rivalry, but there just is a rivalry because it's Nade Shot versus them, and the names are so good. I mean, 100 Thieves OpTic was a great rivalry back in Black Ops 4 as well. Of course, a completely new team now, but it's going to be great to see. I'm sure the viewership's going to be good for this one. The final match of the Sunday. I think I'm going to favour OpTic. I think it's tough to look past them. I think a lot of the times in these big series, OpTic, especially in group play games, I think OpTic do often clutch up in the big series. Now, put it in the major, on the other hand, I'm not, I don't know. We've seen some examples to the contrary. But yeah, what's your take, Austin? I guess a lot of it does depend on what happens in your guys' series against Thieves, right? Because if Thieves beat you guys, I might have to say Thieves are favourites, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Chicago's going to look really good against them. I think it's finally time for Dashy to put up one of those like star performances again. So I think obviously Chicago's map pool and everything that goes up against LAT is looking really strong. So it's definitely like, this is like the toughest week ever for LAT, honestly. They get two of the top 3 teams. It's like, you either look like really good or you get baptized. So it's like, I don't know which one you're going to get.
Yeah, my opinion on that OpTic versus LA series, it really depends if LA beats FaZe. If they beat FaZe, I will favor them in their matchup. But other than then, if that doesn't happen, it's just OpTic. Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's a good place to end. I mean, wow, what a week, what a bunch of matches that we're going to have. We will, of course, be joining you this time next week once again to break down everything that has happened, all the craziness, and continue throughout the final week of Stage 3 before the major kicks off in just a few weeks' time. Thanks to EasyMac and Lionman for joining me. It was a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you all for watching this video or listening on all the platforms you might be listening on. Drop us a like, drop us a comment, drop us a rating, all that type of good stuff, and we will see you next time.
No, don't. You can cut that out.
That was good.